here in town. Thank you. So Crystal serves as a treasurer on the Women's Council of Realtors Las Vegas and UNLV's Graduate School's Financial Wellness Board. She's been seen and heard on National Mortgage News, KNPR, Fox 5, My Vegas, Real Vegas, Vegas Inc. She gets around, y'all. She's pretty popular. Living in Vegas for more than 15 years, she's passionate about her community and contributes time and resources to Shared Village, also formerly known as Veterans Village, and of course, our home UNLV. So excited to have you here with us today, Crystal. Thanks. And then Marty currently serves as vice president at MGM Resorts for event productions. She joined MGM in 2018. And under her leadership, they've done a lot of really wild things, but specifically cutting edge innovation and creativity in event production. Marty has passion for hospitality and a firm belief that events are the greatest communication to foster engagement among global diverse audiences. Couldn't agree more, especially right now. Interesting time for that. She brings leadership experience in finance, operation, experiential marketing, etc. And very unique fact about Marty, if you think someone likes graduate education, I think we found our gal. Marty has a bachelor's in econ and poli-sci from Drew University in New Jersey, also has an MBA from Rutgers and a master's of letters from Drew University. So you've got a few little letters after your name over there. So you've got some of the feet. So I'm excited to chat with you both today about the power of graduate education and how they affect the working world. So let's kick it off a little bit. How do you think students should prepare for talking about being overeducated in the working world if they choose to pursue a graduate degree?
Okay, I don't really agree that you could be overeducated or overqualified. I think it's a misnomer. A lot of people will like say, oh, what if I'm overqualified? Or what if I have too many letters behind my name? Or what if, you know, I have a master's degree and I never talk about it because it's not relevant. So wherever you are and you choose to apply what you have behind your name, that's a great thing that you can never have taken away from you. But it's, you know, you can never add on those educational pieces. So you're going to gain so much from this graduate program or any additional education you do. I don't think you can ever be overqualified.
Yeah, I think that I couldn't agree more with Crystal. And I think that there is no such thing as overeducated. And I think that the higher you go in your education, sure, you're going to choose a program that's about a specific topic or an interest or something you want to do research in. But the higher you go in grad school, the more it is about a way of thinking, a way of applying your skills, about a way of doing research and having a body of a toolkit to use and apply that I think is super relevant no matter what career path you choose and what masters you have. Even if your undergraduate and your master's is not super relevant from a direct connection, there's something. I too am a liberal arts grad, so I feel like that there's those critical writing, reading, and thinking skills you acquire, and then the higher level of those, plus some leadership skills, plus some additional skills that come through graduate education that are relevant no matter which career path you're choosing. So I don't think that there's overeducation. I think there's a matter of you telling the story of how that makes you a better qualified candidate for the roles that you want to have in your career path.
I love that. And I love the idea of telling your story, utilizing the skills that you develop. Can each of you kind of share a little bit about your backstory? Like, what is your story and how does graduate education fit into that?
Sure. So mine is you know, sort of like everybody's story of there is no career path, right? So I graduated from my undergraduate. As I said, I was an economics and political science double major who was supposed to go into finance. So I did. And I became a credit analyst for companies between $300 and $500 million. And I sat in a very little cube and I calculated cash flows. And I was miserable. I thought I was having a midlife crisis at the age of 22 because nobody told me to take your personality into account when you went to look for a job. So I had a quick, fast career change very early on in the process and ended up in events, which was a much better fit. I loved it. I was traveling. But I was working for a company who, what I was doing was important to them, but it wasn't core to their mission. right? It was something, a service that you provided to the key lines of business. And actually, in a way that I can't believe I was this enlightened at the age of 27, I'm not sure I would be now. I knew that I wasn't going to get much further if I wanted to keep in this line of work, right? It was going to be, I could do a little better in that space, but it wasn't ever going to be a big leap to having a career path in the line of business. So I actually decided it was a good time to go back to business school. And I was living in New Jersey at the time. I'd had a long, relationship with New Jersey schools, including Rutgers, and I ended up going there to do my MBA, which was an amazing experience. I learned a lot, etc. And at the same time, ended up doing a lot of freelance work. Having that master's, actually, I left corporate America as a manager level individual. I came back 3 years later as a vice president, partially because I had those MBA letters, partially because I'd had that external, the outside experience, and could really speak differently to a lot of business acumen that I had not had I stayed exactly in that role that I was in. So I progressed through that career, and then at some juncture decided that I wanted to take a break from corporate America, went to actually work in higher ed and used my experience there to work in a nonprofit space where I did do a second master's, which was really, I do have those letters, but I have to admit, it was really kind of just for fun. I'm not sure I even meant to get that master's. And it was in literature between, it was modernist literature between World War I and World War II, purely out of interest. Super good exercise and a lot of reading and a lot of writing, and honed those skills considerably and fed the creative part of my career, but definitely not exactly germane. And now it just makes for a good story. And then from there, I ended up moving to Las Vegas to come join MBGM. That's where I am now.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So I actually moved here to go to UNLV nursing school. So after a few months in that, I decided I absolutely could not stand the sight of blood. So there was really no further place for me to go. So I completed my undergrad in nutrition and told myself I was going to go sell pharmaceuticals. And I interviewed with 3 or 4 companies, and I just bombed out of every single interview, and I needed a job because I needed a job. So I had this 4-year degree in nutrition, and I didn't want to get the registered dietitian. I just had no interest in being active in the hospital, but I had a Bachelor of Science. And so I went and worked for WIC, which is the Women, Infants, and Children's Program. I worked for them for 5 years. I ran 3 clinics. It was amazing. We did a ton of campaigns, and I learned a lot. And I actually during that time got my master's in public health. And then I moved away from WIC, and I went and worked in school-based health centers in schools, providing on-site healthcare to schools that were underserved. And I did research in that for my master's. It was just not really like up my alley. I really didn't ever have a career path or where I was going. I just knew I was going to do something and like it one day. And so I kept trying these things, and eventually I coordinated 5Ks for the Arthritis Foundation. That was great. So I was just kind of bouncing around and making a living, but not like living my dream life. And I knew I wanted to do something, and I actually always really was so interested in real estate and buildings and architecture and things like that. And so I went to real estate school, and I decided I want to be a realtor, but then it just didn't want to be a realtor, and I wanted to be a loan officer. So these little things, these little school things are things like you never be overqualified. It's not like I'm going to step into a loan interview and say I'm a real estate agent, I have this and this and this. I'm just going to be a lender. But anyway, so I decided to be a lender about 5 years ago, and I have never been more fulfilled in my life. It is like literally a 3-day class that I took, and I have my master's. Used all of this education, but now I'm a loan officer for the last 5 years with literally, no career path. Just
Nobody has a career path. It's the biggest misnomer ever.
Right, exactly. It is a misnomer. So, like I said, I am among a ton of individuals who didn't even graduate from high school, and very few people in my field have a master's degree, let alone. So it does actually allow me to stand out and talk to more people than most of my peers. And that's what I think is super important. You can never be overqualified. But
Yeah, I love that. I love that because we talk about a lot. There is no like straight and narrow way to any career. I think when we're an undergrad, we think it is sometimes. We're like, oh, okay, you get a bachelor's of psych and then you become a psychologist, or you know, give you a bachelor's of finance and you go into finance. And very rarely does it actually work that way. Oftentimes we kind of stumble into our careers and maybe hate them and then change and then find something else we love. And it's just a really wild ride, I think, in general. So I think that that's a good segue into what type of skills do you think are most necessary to kind of be successful in life that maybe you do learn in education, whether it be undergrad or graduate school?
I think the two areas that I would focus on that you learn through grad school, the first is lifelong interest in asking good questions, right? What the whole academic pursuit is learning about something you did not know, right? Why would you be there if you already knew it? Your entire life looks like that. I mean, Crystal's story is fabulous because it had twists and turns and different areas of interest and things that evolved. And without good questions and without a healthy sense of curiosity and et cetera, how do you get there? And I think that graduate school and education and continuing education and all of those things really reinforce that curiosity and those questions and how to ask them and frame them and how to keep your mind just open to the world around you versus jumping to an answer, assuming we know where to go, assuming the answers. So I think that's the first body of knowledge, is the sort of healthy question answering. And the second one that I think is super important is that leadership. I think leadership skills, and I'm going to separate that from management skills, right? We can talk about that separately, but leadership skills, whether it is over a group of people, whether it is in the discipline that you're in as a thought leader, is super crucial. And I think your graduate education gives you time and space to develop those, right? I mean, go out aggressively meeting people who've been experts in that space before, knowing what to do, how you want to approach things, being proactive in structuring what your research and what your academic path looks like. So I think those are the two things that, from a skill set perspective, that I think are super crucial in that space.
Yeah, I definitely agree with asking questions and always taking it deeper versus taking everything at face value. Always looking for the next question to ask or the next problem to solve, and digging super deep into a topic or subject that is important and relevant. Finding new answers and innovative things. So.
Yeah, I think we toss around critical thinking a lot, those words. But I don't think we often know what they look like in real life. And I think that's exactly what they are. You know, asking good questions, thinking about things, critical questions that happen in our society, they're important. And I think critical thinking is essential in leadership, really. It's very important.
I think now so, even more than ever, there are, every single day, you are exposed to a million, quote unquote, sources of truth, right? Coming from a wide variety of locations. And how do you verify? How do you know what to believe? How do you know what you believe, right? I mean, there's a almost academic approach to information sourcing every single day. And I think that critical thinking is crucial, right? Where does this come from? What do I feel about it? Can I take it up a notch and add some value to that conversation? Right, I think that critical reading, writing, communication skills. I mean, the other one that along the lines of that is that no matter what you do, the ability to speak and write clearly, which of course is one of the least mastered but most valued skill sets in the professional universe, is what so much of what comes out of this, right? I mean, can you read, can you write, can you make your view known concisely, all of that, and can you be convincing in your argument to do so? You know, is super part of that critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that I often see working with so many of our undergraduates is that they actually have a lot of these great skills, right? You know, as you mentioned, we do know how to speak and we know how to write, and those are skills we learn in undergrad, and skills we really learn in life in general. But we don't often know how to speak about them. And I think something that I often heard about when I was in graduate school was imposter syndrome, right? And I feel like that's something we don't often speak about as much in the corporate world, but definitely exists. We all know people that have experienced that. What do you think has been your experience with imposter syndrome, if ever, and kind of how did you overcome that?
Did you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody does, right? I think imposter syndrome is real, and every time, I'm sure you've had the same sort of experience, every time you go through a job change, life change, career change, you just wonder, am I pretending? Am I something I'm not? Do I have the right skills to do this? I think everybody experiences that. I think the real question is what you do with it and about it, and how you show up in the universe, right? And so I think that, I think it's real. I think especially for women, right? I mean, there's all these stats of which I know none of off the top of my head that women are likely to only apply for jobs when they've already done it and feel like they can check the box on all of the skill sets. I think that men are more likely to apply for things that are stretches and that are more assignments to it because they're like, I can do that, right? So I think, I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I
with
agree,
that.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
But so I think that knowing that you have skills to apply to something versus you've done that actual thing is the logic that you have to come back to overcome that imposter syndrome. A healthy dose of self-confidence doesn't hurt, and asking good questions, right? I mean, there's a million books out there about how to shorten your learning curve in a new job, how to catch up faster and do all these things. I don't know that anybody expects you to go into the world knowing all the answers for any job you're about to take. It's more about the approach in which you take it, more than anything else.
I mean, in all reality, I do feel a little bit of a glimpse of this frequently, this imposter syndrome, because, when you look at everything that you're doing in life, it is really amazing, could any of you guys have imagined yourself where you're at 5 years ago, so you always are going to have some of that and questioning yourself and questioning your abilities. But I do definitely agree with Marty over here. It's just all about how you show up and bring your best game to every competition, and just always make sure that you're, fulfilling those boxes that you're supposed to check. So if you're supposed to be prepared for something, be prepared for something. If you're supposed to have done something, do it. And just always making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. And then I think you can avoid having the anxiety from imposter syndrome.
Those are some good words of wisdom right there. Be prepared, absolutely. Well, and I think something that I find often myself, absolutely, just kind of being raised in higher education, essentially, and definitely working with so many students over the years, is that everyone is always talking about work-life balance, right? This is a very common topic in our world in general, but especially for our students. They're pulled in a million different directions. And I think, especially as one of our panels earlier was talking about in graduate education, one of the best things you learn is time management, because you are quite literally pulled in a million different directions. So what do you think that kind of looks like for you? Is I don't actually believe in work-life balance. I think it's kind of a myth at this point in my career. But what do you think that looks like, and how can we encourage our students to maybe do things in the undergraduate and graduate career that prepare them for some version of balance per se?
I'll answer this actually. I think it's so hilarious when people ask, how do you juggle everything you do? Just so you guys know a little bit, I'm a single mom. I am definitely running a very successful mortgage practice. And I do a lot of extracurricular. So I do a lot on the outside that people can see, that they say, how do you balance that? But the reality is those are just the only things that I do. So I make sure that I prioritize the things that are so important to me and put everything that I have into those things, like my child, my job, and the things that are important to my child are basically, that's it. That's all I do. So I agree with you. It's such a myth to have this perfect work-life balance. It does not exist. And if it does, I'll pay you $1 million to show me how, because I just don't think it does. I often tell people I'm married to mortgages. It's such a reality. But you only have 100 and you put 50 over here and 50 over here, you have 0 left. So if something's important to you, you have to prioritize it. put on your schedule and time block. Time blocking and scheduling, those are like number one.
Oh, yeah, I think that's totally true. I know this is terrible news, but I am inclined to agree with both Jenna and Crystal that work-life balance isn't a thing in a way that you'd like to believe. I shut this off at 5, so on and so forth. I think that there are times that you are heavily weighted in one direction and something's got to give. There are times that you can be heavily weighted in the other direction and something else has to give. I think the things that you learn in undergrad, and I bet every one of you, we're gonna test this right now. I bet every one of you knows this about yourselves already. By this point in your academic careers, what is your tolerance for waiting till the last minute? How many of you do your best work when you wait till the absolute last minute to get something done? Okay, we got somebody who will proudly. How many of you, the stress level of waiting till the last minute is so much more that every time you do it, you're like, I'm never gonna do this again. This is not my best work and this makes me crazy. Right? Okay, you got a bunch more of those folks. I fall a little on that side and my behavior would sometimes be to the other side. So I think that here's the thing, right? You already know the answer to how time management is going to work for you. You already know it in your heart, in your gut, because you've tested that out over your years in academia to date, right? So that's the takeaway from here that you're going to bring to grad school, to your job, to whatever. Is it, I'm going to do this because I will die if I do this at the last minute. I'm going to make myself stressed for no particularly good reason to get this done, right? Grad school is a lot about creating your own deadlines, creating that schedule and self-management and how you want to do this while being pulled in a lot of directions. It's how at this point in your life and in your academic career, you're going to set the tone for the rest of your life and how you want to schedule and block your calendar and all of those things. You know, you also realize that the further you get in your life, right now, there's a high probability that if you wait to the last minute and you're stressing yourselves out, the only people you are fundamentally harming in that is probably you. Right? I mean, you may have children, you may have a significant other or parents or your pets and people you're responsible for, etc., and the impact to them. But the further you get along, the more you realize that means that those other people lose out for all of that in there. So, you know, you have to plan for that a little bit, which is why the premise of balance at all times is not going to be great, right? I mean, if you need to be somewhere and your child is committed after, you know, you have to be at soccer games, you have to be at dancing school, you have to be at these things, the work stuff cuts off, right? You're like, you know what? This meeting is going to wait till tomorrow. If this is an emergency, it's not mine. So we're going to move it on, right? You know, if not, right, these are the things other people start to lose out in there. So I think I think the other thing that we lose track of, and I feel like Crystal, we're gonna send you to spa day, because I feel like the other thing that is crucial in this conversation in your work-life balance is self-care. There has been so much written, and I'm so glad to see it in the last 18 months for, of course, a wide variety of external reasons about mental health and self-care and being where you need to be in order to do that. That totally gets lost in the sauce. Everybody who's working and responsible to a million other things, self-care is the first one to go. Out the door, never gonna see it again. I'm telling you, I've had one nail that's been broken for about 3 weeks now because I have done nothing about it, including finding a nail file. I mean, that minimal level of self-care, totally out the window. Right? So, you know, it's the stuff that you need to remember on what is, like everything else, what do you need to be the best version of yourself? I'm terrible at night. I am the best disguised introvert you will ever meet. At about 9 o'clock at night, I have to stop talking to people. I don't care. I get at that phone, I will answer a text, I will answer an email. I can't talk to you after that. My spouse knows I can hardly utter a sentence after that. If I'm at an event that I'm working, if I know I need to save my energy up for that, I'm gonna need a little extra room in the morning, right? I am terrible because I need the downtime to re-energize, to be the best version, to do all of those things, right? I mean, you need to know what you need for you in order to make that happen. And it is amazing how fast you can erode. It is shockingly fast how you can erode, and knowing it and being aware of it and calling it out for yourself and for those in your support system is so important. So I know that is wildly off the topic of work-life balance, but it's the part of the balance that gets lost first.
I actually think that was very much so great in alignment that I think you're right. We've heard a lot about mental health over the last 19-ish months, which is fabulous for a lot of reasons. But I think what we're seeing right now is that some people are taking advantage of that, and good and bad ways, right? Some people are taking care of themselves in ways that they never did before, which is amazing. And other people are now using mental health as almost a loophole to say, I don't have to follow through on my accountability. I don't have to commit to things. I don't have to finish things on time. And I worry as we graduate our students into graduate school and into the world that they will not be able to be accountable and have commitment because mental health is now essentially a loophole for a lot of people. So how do we balance that in the working world? How do we tell people, yes, absolutely, mental health is important. You should take care of yourself. You should prioritize that. But you do have to follow through on the things you commit to. And you can't just say, I'm 3 weeks late on this deadline, CEO of MGM, I'm sorry, and not get fired.
As somebody who worked in higher ed for 4 years at the undergraduate level, I can tell very strongly that that is where you work. I feel that message a lot, right? I feel that message a lot. Right, as a hiring manager and as somebody, I mean, you create your own business, you actually have to build a world, so that self-motivation must exist. Yeah, it's not an excuse. What you create in terms of accountability and ownership is yours to own. You don't get a blank check out of those things. You have to work it into the plan 100%. It doesn't mean you should be overcommitted. It also means in the prioritization of your commitment. I'm going to assume that for most of you, for obvious reasons that you are here right now, your number one commitment is school. It's school. It's the studying, it's your work, it's all of those things. You may secondarily have a job, right? How do you pay to be here? Those types of things. And then you have a myriad of other commitments, extracurriculars, your social life, etc. Right? When things get overwhelming and you have to give, you're not going to give up school and you're not going to give up your jobs. You have commitments to those things, not excuses for them. Right? It's the other stuff that has to give a little bit. And as somebody who hires regularly, people who are, you have to be 21 to come work for us. So I know that you are all in approximately the right age, right? People who've not had that commitment before, I'd be like, that's nice. I hope you had a good time partying last night because I'm sending you home now. You have missed your day of work because you made the decision you did. You are ill prepared to be here today. And that might have been what you needed in the moment. And that might have been what made you feel good. That was not responsible, accountable, and there were repercussions for that today. 100%. I think sometimes there's a harsh reality of what the outside world looks like. Good job, you made your choice. Now you live with it. 100%. I know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have some employees, and it's interesting, but yeah, accountability. You can just tell you're gonna do better if you're more accountable and responsible. Like my work is commission only. Like we don't have salaries or base pay or anything like that. So I'm technically unemployed until I have my next file funded. So I could work on a file for 30, 40 days and it not fund and I don't make money. So anyway, I have 2 assistants. I hand most of my deals to the assistant who consistently performs. The one who shows up hungover, the one who shows up and makes excuses and goes to coffee 30 minutes after arriving and whatnot. I literally don't even hand him a deal. I like have him bring me copies of things like this. So he doesn't make money. And it's just, that's the reality. That's how it's going to be out there. And it might just be a different wage that you might make or a different opportunity that you're going to be presented. But if you continuously show up and show everybody around you that you're reliable, you're going to have more and better opportunities. So just Las Vegas is so small. So if you plan to stay here, like you're going to probably encounter, your classmates in 10 years from now. I encounter people all the time from when I went to school, and it's amazing because they all know I was reliable then. So they're like, oh, you can do my mortgage now. And it just circles back. So just make sure that you're consistently performing in all areas of your life that are important.
Yeah, I think that's a super good point. Your personal brand has already started. right? I just that have exactly the end of the last segment and the conversation about your social media imprint, right? And what's out there that doesn't disappear. Your professional reputation has already begun. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you all don't mind, if you all have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask, raise your hand, et cetera. Those of you in Zoom as well. But if you all don't, this is very off topic what we're talking about, but do you mind expanding a little bit on that professional brand? I think that this is actually what I love about working with community members so much is that you all say the things that I want to say desperately, but cannot. So thank you for that. But truly, I think that we get lost in our social media world, even us as, adultier adults. I don't know what to say at this point. You all are absolutely adults. We're just older versions of adults. But I think we all get lost in social media and posting the cute pictures of us in front of all the cute clubs and all the things. I don't do this anymore, but I used to. But how do we, it's okay to have fun and it's okay to have professional versions of fun, but you do have to own that is the persona you're putting out there. And one of our business faculty, she talks about this often that I love, that she says that, your personal brand, your professional brand is one brand. She's like, you don't get to choose when you show up as your personal brand and your professional brand, it's one. You are one human. So do you mind kind of expanding on how you all built your brand, what that looks like, and how do you show up?
I mean, my brand is everything. People hand me every single detail of their life. I get their tax returns, I get their date of birth, I get everything for, and they have to have a strong trust in me. So being your trusted mortgage advisor is literally my brand. So everything I do is circulating around that. So I don't really engage in activities that I shouldn't be posting about. However, at the beginning of my career, I did enjoy the fruits of my labor a little differently, and I like to travel. And I would post pictures of me traveling. Now, unbeknownst to me, this was losing me business from realtors who didn't want to send me deals because I was always out traveling. So then I realized I shouldn't be traveling or posting about traveling. And I don't post anymore when I'm out because I want to appear to always be ready to take that next loan application because that's my job. So like my personal life is literally being a loan officer. It couldn't be more integrated than it is. And I think the older I've gotten, the more it's gotten like that. So I know sometimes I get those memory posts and I'm like, yeet, delete, I mean, this is like, we're talking about like undergrad. But yeah, I think that your personal brand couldn't be more important. And even when I was in the nonprofit field, just even learning how to become, what is that, culture? I don't know it anymore because I just work for a company culture, but there were certain ways to dress. So, I showed up at what I thought was completely professional and appropriate. And I got written up for like the first 2 weeks of work. I was like shocked. I don't know. So, you have to like look at everybody around you when you're going into an area and know, like, do you fit in, and look at yourself from somebody else's lens. I know a lot of people that I work with dress like more like they should be in a nighttime club during the day, like just scantily clad, whatever. And it's just like, it's not a good brand for being a trusted professional. If you're going to be a nightclub promoter, that's a great look. And actually like, you're going to be successful because that's what people want to see when they go out. But when they're going to do financial things or the biggest purchase of their life, they're not going to want to be like in club attire or with somebody who's super hungover, or even somebody who makes the poor choice to go out when they're coughing and sneezing. I mean, this is like irresponsible. And I would say people will definitely get judged harsher on this now, is just coughing and sneezing. I mean, I don't want to be super judgy, but smelling like certain like smokes and things like that, like people judge that, and you couldn't be more better to like keep your brand in a better line. I guess it's like,
I understand the master's in public health. It's coming out right now.
The other thing that made me think of is, as somebody who's only been living in Las Vegas for the last 3 years, wow, this is a weird location. Never actually had I contemplated though, well, if you're going to be a nightclub promoter, this is a good look. I had not actually thought that all the way through. So so now I'm, that's going to go into the repertoire on a go-forward basis. So when I think about your personal brand, I think about it in a couple of ways. I think a number of them. Crystal has already hit on in terms of trust and your character and how you convey that to others through all of your interactions. I will repeat again that I think Las Vegas is a really small town with really big buildings, right? You never know who is standing next to you in the grocery store, who observed how you speak to the checkout clerk, to the person standing in line around you, right? Have you ever noticed that, like, ew, that person is so rude, like, that's not nice. And then you're like, oh, I know them, right? I mean, you had this happen. You know, I think that how you show up in the world is truly holistic. So I think that there's those types of like the character that you are. I think the other one that, you know, in that personal brand piece is your business acumen. Right? What are you showing up to the table with, right? I mean, I think every one of you that's here is already bringing your undergraduate both knowledge and disciplines that you've studied, as well as the skill sets that you've developed, as well as your long-term aspirations, whether it be grad school, professional steps, going back to school, multitasking, whatever it is that you're doing. You know, I think that there's that business acumen that you bring to it. And then the third one that I think that's in there all the time that people read is your energy. Are you a positive person? Are you, do people, and I don't mean like enjoy being around you, like you're fun at a party. Like, are you holistically, I mean, that might not be so bad either, especially if you let come over. But you know, are you a can-do person? Are you a yes, I'm gonna help? Are you a good team player and collaborator? Are you just as okay being the team leader as you are being a team member, right? I mean, role clarity is not included in that role, but like, you know, how you put your energy out there is just as important as your character and your business acumen. And all of that adds up, you know, in the middle of it for something holistic, right? I mean, if you're going to trust somebody with every personal piece of information, and who makes a bigger purchase than their home, right? There's your entire life savings directly into that mortgage that's going to take you 30 years to pay off. Trust is a big factor in that. You're going to want your employer to feel the same way about you in a job that you have as every one of Crystal's customers feel about working with her, right? You want that level of trust. So I will tell you on the personal front, I just had a conversation this morning. As you well know, most of our employees in the last 18 months have been furloughed, right? And then we had this slow return to work over a period of time. And there were two gentlemen that work in my organization, and they do not work directly for me, who I brought back a month ago. I think it's a month now. And I went to bat to bring back their jobs because I trust them, because I needed them on the team, right? It wasn't about their direct manager, and it wasn't even about the specific skill sets they brought to that job. I needed them back, right? I just needed other team members to help move this forward with some trusted people who I knew that if I looked at either of these gentlemen and I said, this is what we need to get from here to New Year's, they're going to look at me and say, got it. And that was all I need to hear. And I know that they do, right? So I think that that's a big thing about their personal brands that they take seriously, that I take seriously. And in this case, quite honestly, gave them their jobs back.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I love that aspect of trust, because I think that's something that we kind of take advantage of that we don't realize. You know, all of you trust your professors on some level to teach you accurate information in a timely fashion, that they're going to eventually grade your papers and that they're going to move you along to the next class, right? Like, you have trust that they are experts in their areas, just like you might trust the person that raised you, or maybe not, but maybe you do, or, you know, that you trust your employer that they're going to pay you every 2 weeks or once a month, whatever it might be, right? But I think we forget that is actually a developable trait. It's not something necessarily inherently that we're all born with, just like trustability factors done. Like, you can all think of that one person that you're like, I really actually don't trust them at all. Yeah, so maybe think of that person and do the opposite of what they do, right? Do the opposite. But I think back to one of our earlier panels today, we talked a lot about kind of the influence that other people have on, you know, whether it's pursuing graduate school or whatever happens after we graduate from college. And I think that something that came up prominently was mentorship. And I think that's actually one of the things that I learned from a mentor was trust, like how to build trust with others, for others to build trust with me. And that was a skill I had to practice, I think. So what do you all think about mentorship in terms of, especially when you're thinking about going to graduate school or beyond, how do you develop those relationships? What do those look like? How do you maintain them?
It's I mean, definitely it's so important to have a mentor, somebody to guide you, or multiple mentors in like whatever you're trying to attain, because it is hard to like navigate even in this small town what you're supposed to be doing to get where you need to be or want to be. I attribute the majority of like my extra success to my mentor, like because they are the ones who can say, you're doing this completely wrong and what you're doing is actually sabotaging you. You know, and somebody to say that and have the energy and like selflessness, it truly is selfless for somebody who is a future competitor of yours. That's who your mentor needs to be, to offer you advice, to help you. So you need to find somebody who is truly successful in whatever area that you're wanting to be, to mentor you in that specific area. And it's okay to have more than one mentor. And you can take from them whatever, but just always remember that they're gonna expect you to pay back going forward. So try to like be the best version of yourself to show them work. But I think you all should try and find mentors if you don't have.
How many of you do have mentors already? And is it a formal mentor relationship or is it an informal mentor relationship?
Do you know the difference?
I don't know the difference. I have a peer mentor. I'm a freshman in my undergrad right now.
Okay,
And so this is my first semester here.
so that's a formal program. You've established, David, you have accountability to one another. That would be a great example of a formal mentorship. Informal is you stumble upon somebody who really does, you hit it off, you play a role in it, and you have more of a social contract of that role and how you support one another, versus I've signed up for a program, I've been assigned a mentor, and you meet somebody new through that.
Thank you.
No problem. That's actually, it's important and could work on already getting in, engaged in the value of mentorship. So I agree with everything Crystal is saying. Mentors serve different roles in your life at different times based on what your needs are. Right? I mean, I think that there's a couple of key things about getting the most out of having a mentor. The first is, especially for a formal relationship, understanding what you want to work on together. Right? Are you using them because you really want to learn a business acumen in some sort of field or discipline? And you're like, okay, I got a lot of questions, right? Sometimes you want to use them because you're a first-time manager of people and you're like, talk about your imposter syndrome. Suddenly you go from, I'm doing my own thing, up, so I'm suddenly responsible for people. Now what, right? Always a scary transition. But you know that, how do I manage people for the first time, right? You might need a mentor at that moment in time. Sometimes you've just become a parent, you're trying to pursue a career and you have absolutely no idea how to make that work and to balance your life and all of these things and fit all of the titles that life has assigned to you, right? I mean, there's just a lot of options. And of course, a million other examples too. So I think knowing what you want and articulating it out of your mentor and that relationship is important, right? Because otherwise, you know what you are? You're friends. Right, you're friends, you're people who are there to chat and catch up, and it could be a great part of your support system. It could be, or somebody who is coaching you more formally, but you're not really pursuing the mentor aspect of what that relationship is. So I think that that's the first thing, is knowing what you want out of it. The second piece of that mentor relationship is how you ask for somebody to be your mentor, right? Sometimes, and if it's not a formal program where they've opted in and you've opted in and some genius person in the middle matches you up, because I don't know how they do it, but they do a good job. So somewhere in there is, saying to yourself and to somebody you've encountered, I'm at this point in my life, I am looking for a mentor. Will you serve that role, right? I think it's okay to ask people to do that for you and play that role. And I think at the same time, also acknowledging in that ask or in any of those relationships, what you also bring to the table. I think Crystal's right about that, returning the favor, right? Make it so it's not one way. You must know something that they don't know. You bring life experience to the conversation that they might not. Make sure you're asking in return what you can do for them also. If it's somebody who, right, there are 5 generations in the workforce simultaneously. If it is somebody who is not digital native, and by the way, I'm not saying that a younger person can't be a mentor to an older person. In the slightest, I don't think that that's correct at all, but you might have a skill set or they have no idea what to do with social media, or if that's important to them that they, you can add some value in their worlds too. So recognizing how to make it reciprocal is super important also.
Yeah, I'm in awe right now. That was really good, really good, both of you. I think, and to both of their points, really, we have all sorts of great mentorship programs on campus, whether you're in liberal arts and we have, alumni mentoring, community mentoring, the first year mentoring programs, or, through the graduate college with Rebel Advantage mentoring program. There's so many mentoring programs, which I also understand can be extremely confusing. Ask someone, ask other students, what type of mentoring programs are you involved in? Ask your faculty if there are research-based mentoring programs, because those exist too. So talk to us, because there's so many different resources that we would like to plug you into. And someone said earlier, they're like, it's too late for me. It's never too late. It's never too late until you graduate, then it's too late. But it's not too late. Then we just move you to these beautiful people and they get to help you. So just remind yourself that it's never too late to get involved, get a mentor, find someone to help you. That's literally what they pay us for at the university. So you might as well take advantage of it. And I agree. I think mentoring is critical. I owe all of my success in my entire career to my mentors, and I tell them that every single day. And that's the other side of it. Make sure you thank them, follow up with them, send them goodies every now and then, remind them that you appreciate them. Absolutely. So as we wrap up, is there any last minute piece of advice that you have to this group of students that are considering pursuing graduate school, and maybe why they should do that, or what is one thing that they should really think about and do to be successful in their life? Loaded question.
What do you have
Loaded
to do to be successful in your lives? My gosh.
If you have to answer that also.
I know, right? It's not like you have the answer to that already. You're right.
No, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
I think okay, if you're not happy, you have to change it. That's all. Like, you just need to make sure that whatever you're doing is making you happy and that you're doing, fulfilling work. So if you decide that you wanted to go on a certain career path and you get into it, you absolutely hate it, don't torture the rest of the world being negative. just change. And I've changed careers, and like I said, it was exactly what I needed to do, and I'm so happy now, and I couldn't be happier. So I think you should always follow your own path to happiness. But just like Marty said, just make sure you put your shopping cart back and turn on your turn signal, and I think you'll be good.
Yes.
But
Wow, I don't know how you follow that. I agree with all of that. I think the one thing that germane to this conversation that I will leave you with is education is not a moment in time. It is a lifelong pursuit. So if this is not your time for grad school, it is not the last and final time to have that conversation. If a formal program that you're looking at right now is not the right fit, there are other opportunities for you, right? I think the fact that if you can continuously reinforce with yourself the need and the interest to continuing to learn always, the right path for it will be there. And there's going to be a good fit for a program, for a class, for a course, for a mentor, for a job training, whatever the deal is. It's an ongoing pursuit, not a moment in time.
Those are beautiful words, beautiful words. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
As we wrap up this 1 o'clock session, we have 2 more scholarship winners.
So via Zoom, we have Isaiah Fox. So congrats, I'll be emailing you.
Yay,
And
Isaiah.
in person, you did have a really good question last fall. What's your name?
Oh, I'm Zoe.
Oh, okay, Zoe, congrats.
Yay, Zoe. Okay. All right, so you are welcome to come say hello, shake elbows perhaps. I don't know where we're at in handshaking situation right now. And say goodbye to our two panelists. Our next panelist will start in just about 5-10 minutes. So there's more snacks, take a break, get some water, and we'll get started in a few minutes.